Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today we're going all the way back to ancient Rome.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, but don't worry, this isn't just a history lesson. We're going to be looking at the philosophy and leadership
Yeah.
of Marcus Aurelius.
Okay.
He was a Roman emperor
Right.
during the 2nd century CE, and he was a Stoic.
And that's interesting because, Marcus Aurelius wasn't just a philosopher, closed off from the world. He was an emperor during some really rough times,
Yeah.
like wars and plagues and political turmoil.
Yeah, you'd think he'd be pretty stressed out.
Exactly. But he stayed grounded. Makes you wonder how he managed that with all that chaos going on, huh? That's what we're looking at today.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah.
And we've got excerpts from a podcast script all about Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism.
Great.
And you know me, I'm always fascinated by ancient wisdom and how we can use it in our modern lives. So we're going to try to extract those little nuggets of wisdom to help us navigate all the complexities of today's world with maybe a little more resilience and purpose.
Because let's face it, we could all use a little more of that these days, right?
Right, exactly. So let's start with the basics. Who was this Marcus Aurelius guy? I have to admit, Roman history isn't exactly my strong suit.
Well, he was born into a prominent Roman family in 121 CE. But he wasn't born an emperor. He was actually adopted by the previous emperor, Antoninus Pius, to be his successor. And here's where it gets really interesting. Even as a young man, Marcus was really drawn to philosophy and Stoicism in particular, and that
Right.
became his guiding philosophy, shaping his whole worldview and his approach to leadership.
Okay, so Stoicism. For those of us who didn't major in philosophy, can
Oh.
we break that down a bit? What's the core idea of Stoicism?
Basically, Stoicism focuses on what you can control. And you know what that is, your own reactions, your thoughts, your own choices. It's about not letting yourself get overwhelmed
Yeah.
by all those external events in life, which, let's be honest, are often chaotic and totally unpredictable.
That sounds pretty relevant right now. Does that resonate with you at all? This idea of focusing on what you can control?
Yeah.
Because I think we all feel, overwhelmed sometimes by, just the amount of information coming at us constantly.
Yeah.
All the demands on our time,
Yeah.
the unexpected things that just happen in life. So to be able to focus on something I can control feels very empowering, especially
Yeah.
when it feels like everything else is, spinning out of control.
Absolutely. It's like finding that center,
Yeah.
that calm in the middle of the storm. And remember, Marcus Aurelius wasn't just reading about Stoicism, he was living it, especially when he became emperor in 161 CE. Can you imagine stepping into that role with all those crises going on?
Wow.
Wars, plagues, political instability. That's a high-pressure job.
Talk about trial by fire. So how did this philosopher emperor, because that's what they called him, right? The philosopher emperor.
Mhm.
How did he put this Stoicism into practice, both as an emperor and a person? Because I'm curious about not just the idea of it, but how he actually applied it.
Well, his writings are really insightful, especially his personal journal. It's called Meditations. And what's really interesting is it was never meant to be published. It was just his own private thoughts and reflections.
So it's like we get a glimpse into his inner world, his struggles, his triumphs, as he's trying to apply these ideas to ruling an empire.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so relatable. Even though it was written centuries ago, we see him dealing with, the same human emotions we deal with, the same problem.
Bro, that's cool. Okay, so let's dive into these Stoic principles. How do they actually, guide Marcus Aurelius in his actions and decisions?
Well, Stoicism, as he practiced it, had four main virtues:
Okay.
wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance.
Okay.
And those virtues formed the bedrock of his philosophy. They shaped his whole approach to leadership and life.
I love a good framework. But how did those virtues translate into real life for him as an
Definitely.
emperor? Because I think that's where we can find the nuggets we can apply to our own lives.
Absolutely. Let's start with wisdom. For Marcus Aurelius, wisdom wasn't just about book smarts. It was about seeing things objectively, understanding the bigger picture, and making decisions based on reason, not on impulse or emotion. Think about how valuable that is, especially for someone in a position of power.
It's like being able to step back from the situation and make a thoughtful choice, even under pressure. Yeah, I think that's something that we could all benefit from, whether we're leading a team at work or, making a tough family decision or just trying to get through the day.
Exactly. It's that inner strength. that ability to choose a reasoned response instead of getting swept away by the heat of the moment.
So wisdom's about making good choices, not letting your emotions take over. What about courage? For Marcus Aurelius, that didn't just mean running into battle.
No, you're right. In Stoicism, courage isn't about not feeling fear. It's about facing those challenges head on with resilience. And let's be honest, life throws a lot of battles our way, even if they're not literal battles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Work deadlines, relationship troubles, feeling overwhelmed by your to-do list. Sometimes it takes courage just to get out of bed.
Exactly. And those everyday challenges, they're just as real. They demand just as much inner strength as any physical battle. And Marcus Aurelius knew that. He saw plenty of battles. But his writings also talk about his struggles with personal setbacks, ethical dilemmas, anything that required that inner strength.
It's about having that grit to keep going even when things are tough.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how these Stoic virtues are like building blocks for a resilient life.
Yeah.
So what about justice? How did that play out in his leadership?
For Marcus Aurelius, justice was about acting fairly and treating everyone with respect, regardless of their social status. He saw his role as emperor, not as a privilege, but as a responsibility to serve the people. He believed that true leadership wasn't about power or personal gain. It was about using your position to create a more just and equitable world.
That's powerful, especially when you think about how power can corrupt. He was actively choosing to serve a greater good, even when it might have been easier to focus on himself. Makes you wonder how many leaders today really do that.
It does, doesn't it? It makes us think about what we value in our leaders and ask how we can embody those principles ourselves, even in small ways.
For sure. Okay, so we've got wisdom, courage, and justice. Last one is temperance. What did that look like for an emperor? You know, someone who had access to everything. You'd think he would have indulged in anything he wanted.
Right, well, temperance is all about self-discipline, finding balance and avoiding extremes. For Marcus, it meant keeping his desires in check, not letting his emotions or his appetites control him. Imagine being surrounded by temptation, having access to every indulgence imaginable, and still choosing moderation.
Wow, that takes serious willpower. Honestly, that's something I struggle with, like resisting that extra cookie or staying focused when my phone's buzzing with notifications. It's a constant battle.
We all face those temptations, but the Stoics remind us, true freedom isn't about indulging every whim. It's about mastering yourself, making conscious choices, even when it's hard.
That's really hitting home for me. Especially in our world of instant gratification and endless distractions. Temperance is more relevant now than ever.
It is, and it's not about deprivation. It's about finding that balance. That allows us to live with intention.
So we've got the Stoicism basics down. Let's get back to those personal writings, the meditations. You said they were never meant for anyone to read. What kind of insights can we get from them?
Meditations is like a window into his mind. We see an emperor grappling with real problems while trying to live by these philosophical principles. And because it wasn't meant for an audience, it's raw, it's honest, and it's incredibly relatable. One passage that always stands out to me is where he writes, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts."
Wow, that's powerful. So simple, yet so profound. It really emphasizes that idea of controlling your thoughts. But I bet even for an emperor, maintaining that mental discipline was tough.
Of course. And that's what makes meditations so compelling. We see him struggle, we see him doubt, we see him question. But ultimately, he recommits to those Stoic principles. He reminds himself to step back, to look at things objectively, and to choose his response.
So it's not about suppressing your emotions. It's about not letting them control you.
Exactly. Stoicism isn't about becoming an emotionless robot. It's about recognizing you have a choice in how you react. It's about that space between stimulus and response, where you can pause, reflect, and choose a wiser path.
That space for reflection is so important.
Yeah.
Especially in our world of constant stimulation.
It is. Because in that pause, in that moment of stillness, that's where you access your inner wisdom, your courage, your sense of justice. You connect with those Stoic virtues.
Yeah.
And make choices that are aligned with your values.
I love that. It's like hitting the pause button on autopilot and taking back control. So we talked about Stoicism as a personal philosophy, but Marcus Aurelius was also a leader. How did those Stoic principles shape his leadership style? I'm curious to see how this philosophy played out in real life.
Well, his leadership was deeply rooted in those virtues. Remember, he saw his role as emperor, not as a path to power or glory, but as a responsibility to serve the people.
And that was centuries before modern ideas of servant leadership.
Exactly. This commitment to duty shows in how he handled all those crises. Imagine leading an empire facing wars, plagues, and economic instability. He stayed calm under pressure, made rational decisions, and never gave in to fear or despair.
It's like he had this inner strength that let him handle any problem. How did he develop that resilience? That's something I think we all want.
Well, on top of those core Stoic virtues, he also used some unique Stoic techniques. One that's interesting and maybe a little counterintuitive is called negative visualization.
Negative visualization. That sounds like the opposite of what we're usually told. Aren't we supposed to focus on positive thoughts,
Eh,
manifest good things?
It might sound strange, but the idea is to prepare yourself for setbacks by imagining them beforehand. It's like a mental fire drill.
So if you mentally rehearse difficult situations, you're less likely to be surprised by them when they happen. I can see how that would be useful.
It's about taking away the fear of the unknown. If you can imagine those obstacles, you can start to think about how you might respond. You can develop a plan.
It's not about dwelling on negativity. It's about using those thoughts strategically.
Exactly. It's about anticipating challenges, considering different outcomes, and developing emotional resilience.
I see how that could really help, especially when it comes to feeling overwhelmed.
Absolutely. It's about taking back a sense of control, even when things are uncertain. And this connects to another key part of Marcus Aurelius' leadership, one that's closely tied to Stoicism, his unwavering integrity. He always prioritized ethical decisions, even when they weren't popular or politically easy. He chose what was right over what was easy.
Can you give us an example? How did that integrity show up during his reign?
There are a lot of examples, but one that comes to mind is his handling of the Marco-Mannic Wars. There were brutal conflicts on the Roman Empire's northern borders. Marcus Aurelius could have easily been more ruthless, but he consistently sought peace. He negotiated treaties, even when it meant making concessions. Some people criticized him for being willing to compromise, but he stuck to his principles.
So he was willing to go against the grain, to choose diplomacy and peace, even when it was politically risky. It makes you think about the compromises we all face.
It does, and it shows us that true leadership isn't about winning at all costs. It's about upholding your values, even when it's hard.
Okay, so we've got duty, integrity, and resilience. What else can we take from his Stoic approach? I'm especially interested in anything relevant to our modern world, with all the technology and distractions.
One more key thing, and one I think speaks directly to those challenges, is the Stoic focus on mindfulness and being present.
Mindfulness, that's not just a trendy word.
Not at all. It's rooted in ancient philosophy. Marcus Aurelius wrote a lot about focusing on the present moment. That's the only thing we can truly control.
It's like he was practicing mindfulness without even knowing it.
Exactly. And it makes perfect sense. When we dwell on the past or worry about the future, we're giving our power away. We're letting things we can't control consume us.
I do that all the time. Replaying past mistakes or worrying about what might happen. It's exhausting.
And it steals the joy of now. The Stoics knew that true peace and happiness come from being fully present, appreciating what is right now.
That's really resonating with me. It's like hitting reset on your mind.
Right.
And choosing to be present in what you're doing.
Yeah.
But with all the distractions we have, that's easier said than done.
It does take practice, but the benefits are huge. By being mindful, we reduce stress, improve focus, and make better choices. We can break free from that overwhelmed feeling and start to enjoy the simple things.
Mindfulness was important for Marcus Aurelius. What other surprises are there about his leadership? He's sounding pretty amazing so far.
Well, this might surprise you, considering he was an emperor. But Marcus Aurelius really believed in service and humility. He considered himself a servant to the people, not their ruler.
That's pretty radical for his time.
It is. And this humility shaped how he treated others. He was known for listening to his advisors, considering different perspectives, and being open to feedback.
So even with all that power, he stayed humble. That's such a powerful lesson for any leader.
It is. True leadership isn't about ego or control. It's about serving a greater purpose. And that requires humility, openness, and a willingness to learn and grow.
This deep dive is really making me rethink leadership. It's not about having all the answers or being the loudest voice. It's about service and humility and recognizing that we're all in this together.
That's a beautiful insight. And it brings us to one final crucial aspect of Stoicism that really influenced Marcus Aurelius' leadership, accepting change and the fact that life is fleeting.
Let's talk about that. How did knowing that nothing is permanent shape his actions and decisions? Because that can be a hard thing to accept. Yeah, it can be tough to accept that nothing lasts forever. I mean, it's comforting to know that the bad times won't last.
Yeah.
But it also makes you realize that the good times are fleeting too. How did Marcus Aurelius handle that?
Well, Stoicism acknowledges that everything changes, nothing's permanent. And Marcus Aurelius used that to avoid getting too attached. to material things or the trappings of power. He knew it was all temporary. So instead, he focused on living virtuously, on doing the right thing, because he believed those were the actions that truly mattered.
So it's about focusing on what's really important, not getting caught up in the ups and downs of life. It's like riding the waves instead of letting them crash over you.
Exactly. It's about finding that inner peace amidst the chaos. You mentioned earlier that you and our listeners are looking for ways to feel less overwhelmed. And I think Stoicism offers a way to do that. It's about recognizing that we can't control everything that happens, but we can control how we respond.
That's so true. It's a reminder that we have a choice in how we react to the changes and challenges that come our way. We can resist and cling to the past and get swept away, or we can learn to adapt and go with the flow and focus on what we can control, our actions, our values, our inner state of being.
That's beautifully put. And that's the heart of what Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism offer us. A timeless framework for dealing with life's complexities, with wisdom, resilience, and purpose.
It's like we found this ancient treasure map, leading us to a more fulfilling way of life. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism, what are the key things our listeners should take away? What can we learn from this philosopher emperor that can help us in our modern lives?
Well, first, focus on what you can control. Remember those core Stoic virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. They're not just abstract ideas, they're tools we can use every day to make better decisions, face challenges, and live a fulfilling life.
Like an inner compass guiding us through life's ups and downs.
And don't underestimate the power of self-reflection. Take some time every day to look at your thoughts, your motivations, your actions. Are they aligned with your values? Are they leading you toward the person you want to be?
Meditations is a powerful example of how self-reflection can be a lifelong journey of growth and self-discovery.
Absolutely. And lastly, remember that change is inevitable. Embrace it. Adapt to it. Don't cling to what you can't control. Focus on living a virtuous life, on making a positive impact on the world, because those are the things that truly last.
I love that. This has given me so much to think about. It's amazing how wisdom from so long ago can still be so relevant today.
It's a testament to the enduring power of human wisdom, and it reminds us that we're all part of this long line of people searching for meaning and trying to make sense of the world.
So as our listeners think about all of this, what's one last question they could take with them?
Here's a question to consider. What part of your life, your work, your relationships, your personal growth, could benefit from a more stoic approach? What would it look like to embrace those virtues, to focus on what you can control, and find a little more peace in the middle of all the chaos?
That's a great question, an invitation to experiment with these timeless principles and see how they can help us in our modern world.
Exactly. And I think you'll discover that the journey is just as rewarding as the destination.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism. We hope you found some new insights and feel inspired to explore this philosophy further. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep seeking wisdom that helps us all live more fulfilling lives.